We want to talk today a little bit about when we're converting between various forms of numbers. So we have different ways we can represent numbers, either with decimals or in fractions and a couple other ways. And what I want to focus on today is converting from decimals into fractions. So one of the first things that we need to do is we need to say the number. So here I have 0 and 65 hundredths. Now notice I'm not saying 0.65 because when I say 65 hundredths, it allows me to write a fraction more easily. And I know it's the hundredths place because it's 2 digits after the decimal. So saying that it's 65 hundredths allows me to write this as 65 over 100. So I'm off to a good start, but now I need to make sure that this is simplified. Well, automatically I notice that my last two numbers on top and my numerator is a 5 and my denominator is a 0. This tells me that both of these numbers are divisible by 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide, let me go back to my pen, divide both of these by 5. Now sometimes you may find yourself in a situation where you don't know the math fact off the top of your head. I know that 100 divided by 5 is 20, but 65 divided by 5, I'm not 100% sure of. So I'm going to go off to the side, and I'm going to write 65 divided by 5. I know it goes into 6 once. I subtract. That gives me 1. I bring down my 5, and I know now that it goes in 13 times. So that gives me a numerator of 13. Now, I need to make sure that I am done and that I can't go any further. So I do 13. I know 13 is a prime number, meaning that the only thing that will give me 13 is 13 times 1. And so because my top number is prime, I know for sure that I'm finished. And now I've converted 65 hundredths into a fraction. Now, what if we see a number like this? Here we have 4 and 75 hundredths. Again, I want to say the number like it is. So I'm not saying 4.75. I'm saying 4 and 75 hundredths. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 4 and I'm going to hold on to it. So I'm going to come off to the side, and this is where I'm going to put my number, and I'm going to put a big old 4, and I'm going to go ahead and put my fraction bar. Because that whole number, I can go ahead and move off to the side, and I'll just have it as a mixed number in my fraction. So now I want to look at my decimal in conversion. Well, I know that 75 hundredths, okay? Now, just like the previous example, I notice automatically that my back two numbers tell me that both of these are divisible by 5. But because I know my math facts well, I also know that 25 will go into each of these. So I can go ahead and divide both of these by 25. Now, when I do that, that gives me a 3 for my numerator and a 4 for my denominator. And now I know my reduced fraction is 4 and 3/4. Now, if you didn't see this 25 right off the bat, that's okay. If you divided them both by 5, you would have just gotten to a fraction where you just needed to divide it by 5 one more time, but you still would have gotten to this 3/4. So it's all good as long as we get to our final simplified version. And that's an easy way to look at converting decimals into fractions.